electrification, electric car charging station installations, or address climate resilience of multifamily properties. 2. $76 million for the costs to the Secretary of administering and overseeing the implementation of this section, including information technology, financial reporting, research and evaluation, other cross-program costs in support of programs administered by the Secretary in this title, and other costs, and the Secretary may transfer and merge amounts appropriated under this paragraph to Section 40301. 3. $360 million for expenses of contracts administered by the Secretary, including to carry out property climate risk, energy, or water assessments, due diligence, and underwriting functions for such grant and direct loan program. And 4. $250 million for energy and water benchmarking of properties eligible to receive grants or loans under this section, regardless of whether they actually received such grants, along with associated data analysis and evaluation at the property and portfolio level, including the development of information technology systems necessary for the collection, evaluation, and analysis of such data. Amounts appropriated by this section shall remain available until September 30, 2031. B. Eligible recipients. Amounts made available under this section shall be for direct loans, grants, and direct loans that can be converted to grants to properties receiving project-based assistance pursuant to Section 202 of the Housing Act of 1959, 12 U.S.C. 1701Q, Section 811 of the Cranston-Gonzalez National Affordable Housing Act, 42 U.S.C. 8013, or Section 8b of the United States Housing Act of 1937, 42 U.S.C. 1437 f.b. C. Costs. The costs of direct loans provided under this section, including the cost of modifying such direct loans or converting direct loans into grants, shall be as defined in Section 502 of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974, 2 U.S.C. 661a. D. Waiver. The Secretary may waive or specify alternative requirements for any provision of Section 202 of the Housing Act of 1959, 12 U.S.C. 1701Q, Section 811 of the Cranston-Gonzalez National Affordable Housing Act, 42 U.S.C. 8013, Section 8 of the United States Housing Act of 1937, 42 U.S.C. 1437 f, or any regulation applicable to such statutes other than requirements related to tenant rights and protections, rent setting, fair housing, non-discrimination, labor standards, and the environment, upon a finding that the waiver or alternative requirement is necessary to facilitate the use of such amounts. Sec. 40007. Revitalization of distressed multifamily properties. A. Appropriation. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal year 2022, out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, 1. $3,870 million for providing direct loans, which may be forgivable, to owners of distressed properties for the purpose of making necessary physical improvements, including to subsidize gross obligations for the principal amount of direct loans not to exceed $6 billion, subject to the terms and conditions in subsection B. And 2. $130 million for the costs to the Secretary of Administering and overseeing the implementation of this section and the Office of Housing Programs generally, including information technology, financial reporting, research and evaluations, other cross-program costs in support of programs administered by the Secretary in this title, and other costs. The Secretary may transfer and merge amounts appropriated under this paragraph to Section 40301. Amounts appropriated by this section shall remain available until September 30, 2031. B. Loan terms and conditions. 1. Eligibility. Owners of distressed multifamily housing projects who meet each of the following requirements shall be eligible for loan assistance under this section. A. The actual rents received by the owner of the distressed property would not adequately sustain the debt needed to make necessary physical improvements. B. Any such additional eligibility criteria as the Secretary determines to be appropriate, including factors that contributed to the property's distressed state. 2. Use of loan funds. Each recipient of loan assistance under this section may only use such loan assistance to make necessary physical improvements to a distressed property. 3. Loan availability. The Secretary shall only provide loan assistance to an owner of a distressed property when such assistance, considered with other financial resources available to the owner, is necessary to remove the property from a distressed state. The Secretary may provide assistance in any amount that the Secretary determines is needed to make the necessary physical improvements that will correct the deficiencies of the distressed property. 4. Interest rates and length. Loans provided under this section shall bear interest at 1%, and at origination shall have a repayment period coterminous with the affordability period established under paragraph 5, with the frequency and amount of repayments to be determined by requirements established by the Secretary. 5. Loan modifications or forgiveness. With respect to loans provided under this section, the Secretary may take any of the following actions if the Secretary determines that doing so will preserve affordability of the property. A. Waive any due on sale or due on refinancing restriction. B. Consent to the terms of new owner debt to which the loans may be subordinate, even if such new debt would impact the rate of repayment of the loans. C. Extend the term of the loan. D. Forgive the loan in whole or in part. 6. Extended affordability period. Each recipient of loan assistance under this section shall agree to an extended affordability period for the property that is subject to the loan by extending any existing affordable housing use agreements for an additional 30 years or, if the property is not currently subject to a use agreement establishing affordability requirements, by establishing a use agreement for 30 years. 7. Matching contribution. Each recipient of loan assistance under this section shall secure at least 20% of the total cost needed to make the necessary physical improvements from non-federal sources other than under this section, except in cases where the Secretary determines that a lack of financial resources qualifies a loan recipient for a reduced contribution below 20%, or b. an exemption to the matching contribution requirement. 8. Additional loan conditions. The Secretary may establish additional conditions for loan eligibility provided under this section as the Secretary determines to be appropriate. 9. Properties insured under National Housing Act. In the case of a loan issued under this section that is secured by a property with insurance under Title II of the National Housing Act, 12 U.S.C. (1707 et seq.). The Secretary may use funds available under this section as necessary to pay for the costs of modifying such loan in accordance with Section 502 of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974, 2 U.S.C. 661A. 10. Costs. The costs of direct loans provided under this section, including the cost of modifying such direct loans, shall be as defined in Section 502 of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974, 2 U.S.C. 661A. C. Definitions as used in this section. 1. The term multifamily housing project means a project consisting of more than 4 dwelling units assisted, insured, or with a loan held by the Secretary or a state or state agency in part or in whole pursuant to a. Section 8 of the United States Housing Act of 1937, 42 U.S.C. (1437) not including under subsection O. 13 of such section. B. Section 202 of the Housing Act of 1959, 12 U.S.C. 1701Q, as amended by Section 801 of the Cranston-Gonzalez National Affordable Housing Act. C. Section 202 of the Housing Act of 1959, former 12 U.S.C. 1701Q. As such section existed before the enactment of the Cranston-Gonzalez National Affordable Housing Act. D. Section 811 of the Cranston-Gonzalez National Affordable Housing Act, 42 U.S.C. 8013. Or E. Section 236 of the National Housing Act, 12 U.S.C. 1715 Z1, 2. The term distressed property means a multifamily housing project that has deficiencies that cause the property to be at risk of physical obsolescence or economic non-viability. 3. The term Secretary means the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and 4. The term necessary physical improvements means capital improvements that the Secretary determines are necessary to address the conditions making a property a distressed property or that rise to such a level that delaying physical improvements to the property would be detrimental to the longevity of the property as suitable housing for occupancy. D. Implementation